and start whenever you're ready.
All right. Hi, my name is Caroline Hu. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a resident of Somerville. My day job is I'm a postdoctoral researcher, and I am particularly interested in brain evolution. But I also make cartoons and draw illustrations, a lot of it science inspired, and because I'm just so fascinated by the lives of other living systems. And also lately, I have been drawing a bit about my experience as a first-gen Chinese American.
Amazing. So, we like to start interviews with the first question. Are you hood grown, and if so, how does that influence your aesthetic?
So I think my aesthetic, at least my subject matter, I would say is very much influenced by Boston and the greater Boston area being a hub for science and engineering. That's what brought my parents here in the 80s. So I was born to two engineering students in Somerville.
You're so cute.
Right up First Square. And then I've lived a few places since, Midwest, California, but it was science that brought me back here. I kind of feel like a salmon or something, where like I migrated far out and now I'm back. And it was after I came back that I've been drawing ever since I was a kid, but I really revived my passion for art after I came back. So I definitely, in some ways, there is the imprint of this area.
Amazing. So, before we even get into like what you do and what you make, just like temperature check. How are you feeling? How are you coping? How are you caring for yourself during all of, well, now this like slightly reopening phase of this pandemic? How are you feeling during all of it? Especially as a scientist, how do you see this world a little bit like, I want to know through your goggles, essentially, how I should be viewing the world. Because I'm very cautious and I'm not sure how cautious I really should be, but like, how are you feeling? How are you dealing with everything?
So I have definitely benefited from having a job that was considered essential from throughout the closing because I do animal care for laboratory animals. So I've always had a little bit of structure, and so I'm really thankful for that.
That was nice.
And other than that, I like to draw. I'm a little bit of an indoor cat, so I have been able to sustain, some joy at home. But other than that, like, I definitely think I have been very much shaken as a scientist during this time because I do see how like you can dedicate your life to this, and if the politicians don't care, it maybe doesn't matter. Well, it can feel that way. It can feel.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to like remind myself, yes, it does. Yes, it does. Like keep showing up every day.
As a teacher, I feel you. Like, completely ignored by all the politicians.
Yes.
Yeah. But awesome that you're feeling like you at least your art's keeping you sane. And that's the positive of being an artist. A lot of us are able to keep some sanity and keep some structure by making art. So you're a biologist, a cartoonist. What love came first for you? Or how has your love for science informed your art making, vice versa, if it does? Yeah, how does that work?
So I would say both are both pursuits, science and art, for me have been like a mode of knowledge acquisition since I was a little kid. So allegedly, because I was too young to actually form memories about this, but allegedly, when I was like 1.5, 2, and I could finally like fit my fist around a crayon, I was drawing, and I was often drawing animals or plants that I saw, and that was like very important to me, apparently. And
Thoughtless from the beginning.
yeah, I would say like so still now, like when I see something or learn of something that like just blows my mind, I often just have this urge to start making marks about it. And it just helps me, I think, like turn it around in my head, and also just sort of sometimes even like make it your own. So they really feed into one another, and I think that like it's been really great having huge source of inspiration as like during the day, and then having like an outlet for it.
Mm-hmm.
In my
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Nice. So, you are so active in the cartoonist community. I've noticed from following you on Instagram and seeing like all the posts you love to share about, there's a folks who cartoonists that identify as women meetup that are like all virtual now, or people of color that are cartoonists have meetups. How have you been able to find so many people of color and folks who identify as women to connect with, and why are those connections so important to you as an artist?
I found I am hosting every 2 weeks this virtual meetup, virtual now. It used to be in person. That was for women and non-binary cartoonists, and I have to give big thanks to, I'm going to say it, the best comic book store in Cambridge, Millionaire Picnic, because they actually hosted just a get together for
Oh,
a
nice.
group of us. And we're all standing there, eating the free snacks. And it became very clear that a lot of us wanted to have a way of being just like holding each other like socially accountable,
Mm.
and making the time, protecting the time to actually draw, and also just to chat, share whatever is on
Mhm.
our minds or anything new that we learn. So that's kind of how that got started. And I think that for sure the internet has helped a lot in terms of finding people. When I first got here, so that was like 6 years ago, I literally just Googled Boston comics.
Yeah.
And that's how I found the Boston Comics Roundtable, which is another group that's open to anyone. I just started showing up.
Hmm. And those just those connections kind of just motivate you to keep making,
Uh,
or are they just spaces for you to talk about your work?
Both. I think that I'm not surprised that I'm more in the like indie alternative comics circles,
Hmm.
and it's uh, sort of self-fulfilling in a way, because it's like uh, a lot of us don't see ourselves in the characters or narratives that are in mainstream comics.
Hmm.
So it's not surprising that we actually tend to be more diverse, um, along many different axes, and when we show up for like indie comics events. And it's just been great to be able to just connect with other people that like also, they're more likely probably to vibe with a character that I make, and vice versa, than say some of the other more, I guess, commercial comics out there.
Hmm. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit more about your art specifically. How would you describe your color palette? When did you find your style of illustration? And do you feel like your work is still evolving, or have you found comfort in that style?
So my color palette is limited. Okay, I would say part of it's just me. I've always been a pretty monochromatic, achromatic dresser.
Hmm.
I watch the basic cable talk shows of like my teen is a goth, and I remember like sitting there like in my not very cool clothes as a kid and being like, whoa. So I don't know why I'm attracted to just not that much color,
Hmm.
but also I think this is born out of me really getting back into drawing only about 2-3 years ago. And up until then, I would mostly do just line work when I could. And so I just hadn't really practiced with color too much. So when I
Hmm.
started making comics, I was like, okay, let's just try to pick a palette and just stick with it. And it just made it way more, just less scary,
Hmm.
more manageable. So that's kind of where that started, in terms of I use a lot of blues, I use a lot of yellows, and I can't really, I don't know, maybe it's just like, it's sort of stereotypical, right? The whole like science and blue. um, where I think like,
It's
yeah,
also a calm color. There's that
it's
too.
true. Yeah.
You use like a minty green sometimes in some of your tones that I mean, I do appreciate that you often have like really dark darks, and then like you use like kind of some pastelly color versions of colors in there as well. I'm a big fan of your color palette. That's
Yeah.
why I asked. That's why I was
Thank you.
But can we talk a little bit more about like your actual style of drawing?
Yeah.
I've like seen obviously a few of your cartoons now, a few of your comic strips, and I've like noticed that there is kind of like a style of your way of drawing, and then there are some other works that you've been creating that are kind of like a total shift off of that normal style. Do you feel like your way of just like presenting the humanoid form is like where you're comfortable, or do you feel like you'll see yourself evolving in the way that you're depicting people and spaces?
I think that a lot of my style, and I think this is true for a lot of kids who are like part of the East Asian diaspora, comes from anime and just and reading Japanese comics because it was again on basic cable, and it was just sort of like the other aesthetic that was available, and so I definitely latched onto that a bit, and you can see it. I think there's definitely like a Studio Ghibli element to how I draw faces, pretty minimal marks. Um, and I think I think that like it's definitely no matter what, I think my style is going to evolve.
Yeah.
I definitely could see myself just even drawing bigger and adding more detail. I started kind of small because I had noticed that I would thumbnail a page to just make a smaller version of it. Just to first lay it out, and then I would try to draw it, and I told again, I just sort of Googled like how to draw comics, and it's like it needs to be 11 by 17 inches or whatever the classic like Marvel DC size was. And then I would try to draw it that big, and it would just be so lifeless. Like all my lines would just be so, yeah, just dead. And so I brought this up with somebody. I actually went to the Center for Cartoon Studies for a week to do this like intensive, like just a little workshop. And I was like, cool, okay, this will, it totally like relit my flame for comics going there. And one of the instructors there, Corey Handworker, was just like, if you like to draw small and you like how you draw when you're drawing small, just draw small. And I was like, what? And so yeah, that's what was comfortable for me. But now I definitely see, like, I can imagine myself as I grow bolder and just like more comfortable with my own hand, like getting more detailed,
Bigger and detailed. Awesome. And also like the way technology works now and the way that scanners are, drawing small is not an issue the way it was before. Like it's not like you're gonna get like it pixelated if you stretch it out. You're probably gonna get still a good quality. Um, let's talk about like specific pieces of yours. So I love your series of animal social distancing. I think this was like when I first was introduced to your work. I saw you creating these pieces. What inspired the series, and how have you been using your artwork to get folks to donate to charities and be like, you know, helpful and productive members of society?
uh so I ooh, okay. Early on in March, just remember, keeping track of the news and feeling. At some point, I just got so compelled to try to start, raising money for COVID efforts because I gotta admit, like, I have not been the most, in terms of like activism. I think that I have not been as just like aware and energized as I should have been earlier on in life. And I just was kind of watching and observing that, like, I remember when Notre Dame burned.
Yes, the burn, yeah.
And I remember
Everyone donated
yeah, I
everything.
remember seeing all these Facebook fundraisers for a culturally important building,
Yeah.
but it was empty.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember thinking, like, okay, any moment now people are going to start caring about like people getting really sick, and a lot of people getting really sick. And uh, then I started to realize, like, I think the majority of Americans really think that this is not going to affect them. For whatever reason, our exceptionalism the viruses will just bounce off of us or something. And I just like, and I think also the connection of having family in China.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it entered my circle of empathy, you know, and I was just like, I have to do something about this. And so that's what started me in wanting to, coming up with this idea. Well, a lot of people have drawn for charity before, but this is, and I wanted to think about, okay, what can I draw that like, I think I draw like well enough that someone would pay for it, and that I also enjoy enough. So that's when I was like, animals have homes. I actually study some animal homes. So I was like, great, let's just do this. And that was it.
Yeah, it's a really, if you haven't checked it out yet, check it out, folks. But they're really cute, and I love the little like captions you add for each animal, just kind of adding a little playful spin to each of them being on their own and surviving on their own and doing what they should in social distancing, like all of us should be. I saw your beautiful, beautiful cartoon in Grow by Ginkgo, a magazine about synthetic biology for folks who aren't hip. I'm now hip to what that magazine is. But you have a piece entitled How Far Away is China? Mm-hmm. And you talk about your like somewhat readiness for the pandemic, being a biologist and having that connection to China that you just mentioned. Can you talk a little bit about this concept, and if you could break down a little bit about just the importance of this piece and why you thought it was important to get out this kind of story now?
So I think this piece had been sort of burbling in my mind, and I think it was just so perfect that Ginkgo actually reached out at the same time, being like, we want to have like, I guess sort of like diary pieces from scientists. And the reason why I think that like I was so ready to make something about this was because the majority of my extended family lives in Wuhan. And I think that immediately made it so that when you saw the stats about like the novel coronavirus in Wuhan, I was sitting there like just texting my aunt, being like, aha, like what's going on? Mm-hmm. And I think that and as I said earlier, I think that also made it so clear to me that there's nothing special, again, about Americans that we should feel like this isn't going to affect us. We're so interconnected. And I think that to have just to realize how that sense of connection can really expand or contract depending on just like your own background, your political beliefs, that was just, it just really, it was on my mind a lot. Mm-hmm. And so to get this opportunity to make this work, I mean, it was really, it just kind of like burst out of my head. Mm-hmm. It was one of those.
Yeah, you just kind of had to get it on the page type of situations. Yeah, it felt that way when reading it and viewing. The way I read comics, if you don't see my mini little collection here of some of my comics over there, but I often like read my comics and then, I'll read a page and then I look back at the images. I have to like, I'm looking at the images I'm reading, but on top of it, you have to go back and like, really take in the art on top of it after you know the story. And being able to look at just, again, your color palette, the darks, you're able to incorporate warms and cool colors in a really beautiful way that that don't feel like so, primary. They don't feel like that at all. I'm just gonna like praise your work a little bit longer. But I really just, I don't know, I just felt like so emotional after reading it and after viewing it. And I just want to say how important it was to read it. And I think that everyone needs to, and they will when this comes. Yeah, they should. But to end this, I appreciate your time and I appreciate you speaking to me for about 20 minutes. What's next for you in your work?
So I would say the next major thing is to continue the Little Scientist, and I would say definitely this entire year has made me really re-examine how I'm going to continue expanding that world and building that world and the people in it, because it was mostly inspired by my own experience in graduate school, and I know like coming from two parents who are engineers, and all that goes into being know that I had a specific experience pursuing science, and that hasn't been experienced for everybody. And so I want to now spend some time with that world. Do I want to show science as I wish it was? Do I want to show it in a way that examines all of the inequities in it? That's what I'm going to hope. I'm going to spend some good thinking nights on that before I continue.
Awesome. So The Little Scientist, for folks who don't know, I mentioned it when you were our Tag the Artist a couple months ago now, but is your comic book series. You have 2 volumes of correct? Yes, and you'll now be working on a 3rd, which is very exciting. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes so folks can purchase that. And lastly, where can people find you?
So you can find, I have a website that's www.whodrewthis.com, HUDREWTHIS. And that's also my handle on Instagram, Who Drew This. And I also have Twitter, not the best on Twitter. That's my Twitter handle is Who Wants to Know.
Ooh, so you're the best name for the last name can go so many directions. You're lucky with that. Thank you so much for joining me and taking some of your time out of your day. I appreciate it, and I hope everyone can take a look at your beautiful work. And good luck in the lab as you continue to take care of these animals.
And thank you for what you do, uplifting artists. Thank you.
Of course, that's what I'm here for.